Welcome to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And we got our inside linebacker draft preview. Going to roll through 10 guys. Going to hit the top and then find some mid-round values that you guys might be liking on your list. And we're going to look at the Bills' 2019 draft class. Justin, how you doing?
Bobby Skinner, 20 days. 20 days. Jim Finn, number of days until the NFL draft, night one of the NFL draft. I'm getting more excited.
He was the fullback of my childhood.
Yeah, he's also a good-looking man. That's one of the things that sticks out to me about Jim Finn. I'm really getting excited, especially as we're going through these positions. The interior linebacker class as a whole has a lot of depth in it. I think it's up there with cornerback and wide receivers, the three positions that have the most depth. I'm excited that the Giants could possibly walk away with one of these guys. And excited that I'm going to be seeing you in about 2 weeks. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Less than 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, because you're going to come up the Tuesday before the draft.
Less than 3 weeks. So
yeah.
But linebacker is a position of need, but it's not a position of must, I think, for the Giants right now.
Good way to put it.
Tate Crowder right now be their number 2 inside linebacker. I don't think going into a season with him, Slayer as a starter, is the worst thing ever. But it's definitely not the best thing ever. And, I mean, they didn't re-sign Reggie Ragland. It's kind of like Carter Coughlin is number 3 right now.
That's it, yeah.
Like T.J. Brunson obviously can't really factor him into the equation. That's kind of it that they have right now. So we'll get into all that. First, this episode was brought to you by some special peoples. We got John Messina, who was the creator of the Danny Dimes nickname. I went back and found that back in 2019.
Wow.
It was
Welcome.
John Messina. Daniel Swigehart. He's in the World Beater tour. We really do appreciate you, Swigehart. We got Ethan Horn with the E at the end. Ethan Horny. The jokes just write themselves. The other guy's name is not his real name. It's One Fishy Scientist. I'm gonna make a joke, but half people wouldn't find it funny. And B. Nash, whose father, Steve Nash, I want fired as the Nets head coach. But even though we're still going to win the championship, and the Knicks still haven't beat us in over 300 days. Justin, who are these people?
These wonderful people, you know where they went. Patreon.com/TalkingGiants. $2 a month plus some other tiers like the World Beater tier. You can hang out with us while we record the shows live. I gave some Bleeding Blue updates before we recorded the show about some topics and also like future of the show stuff. And also Bobby Skinner will send you stickers, magnets, and twice a month you are entered into winning something from our store or anything you want if you win a raffle. Patreon.com/TalkingGiants. Thanks, patrons.
Thanks, patron. All right, let's get into this 2019 Buffalo Bills draft class and go through it. I think it's a really good draft class, Justin, except for one bust. That's Cody Ford in the second round, which we'll talk about. But again, I think it's a good value, even in this, like guys who aren't necessarily like key contributors. Like, okay, but for where you're drafted, this is a nice place to be, 4 years later. Or 3 years later. But it starts at the top, round 1, pick 9, defensive tackle out of Houston. A lot of Giants fans wanted, Ed Oliver. I know Ed Oliver was a popular name if Quinnen Williams and if the Raiders didn't throw a wrench with the Cleveland Farrell pick, Ed Oliver was on a lot of Giants fans' radar, including myself out of Houston. The Bills are going to pick up his 5th-year option when that comes this after the draft. He's been playing 60% of the snaps at that defensive tackle spot for them. Justin, he broke out for them this past year. Like, he had been a solid player for them. This past year, he really broke out. He had 41 tackles, 4 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 14 QB hits. Was 5th for all of defensive tackles and 10 tackles for loss. Was 11th for QB hits. Generated a lot of double teams. In fact, star Ludulele, former Dave Gettleman draft picker we talked about on this podcast.
They released him.
Yeah, it helped him produce and have some like pass rush win reps earlier in the season.
Yeah.
By pulling so many double teams. So like you can argue the value of the defensive tackle spot at pick 9 for a guy who's playing only 60% of the snaps. Yeah. But as far as Ed Oliver as a player, this was a good pick. It took a little time to burst out, but at the end of the day, it's a good pick.
Yeah, we were hoping that Ed Oliver's 3rd year was going to be Dexter Lawrence's year 3, right?
Yes, exactly that.
He had an AV of 10 on Pro Football Reference, which if I'm seeing that you're having an AV of, that's approximate value, if I see that it's around 10, that means you're having a really good season. And yeah, that's the only thing that my mind goes to, Bobby, is that Hey, and there was the same thing with Dalvin Tomlinson and extending him. If you're only on the field for 60% of the snaps, should we be allocating all these big resources to you? But also, Leslie Frazier's defense is different than, most defenses. It's a 4-3, and the way that they prioritize big guys up front, they may be prioritizing size over athleticism. And certainly, Ed Oliver, on the inside, he's going to be expected to clog holes a little bit more than, let's say, a Leonard Williams type of guy where he's a defensive end in that 3-4 system. He's expected to have a lot of production, have a lot of value.
Yeah, and he did well as a pass rusher. 14 QB hits, which was 11th for defensive tackles. In the run game, the tackles for a loss. Like Ed Oliver is athletic for his size, and in that defense because it's a lot like it's like the 4-3 version of what Patrick Graham did, and some a few other teams around the league do. It puts a lot of stress on your defensive tackles because they're putting so much. They're letting their linebackers get back in coverage. And you got to be able to get to the QB with 4, and Ed Oliver was a big part of that. So, I don't think this isn't like a slam dunk home run first round pick, 9th overall. But I mean, I guess you look at the board after that, and I think the Bills feel pretty good about it. I mean, after that, who was the big name that came off the board? Like you could argue Brian Burns, but I don't think Brian Burns is as good as his stats actually say. Good player. Ed Oliver, has been a good pick for them.
He's also still 24, and he's on the early side of 24. So that's a huge plus too, where the fact, now that you're 3 years in, you have the 5th-year option looming that they, probably pick up, and you have 2 more years like on that rookie deal. I consider that a win. The fact that you drafted this guy so young, and now still very, very young, and hopefully the Bills are going to keep him, and that's a good first-round pick.
Round 2, pick 38. No ways around this. This was a bust, a huge, huge bust. Cody Ford, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I mean, he has been very bad for them. He started his first season, got moved into the lineup and started at right tackle. Then in 2020, they were like, all right, we're going to move him to guard, start him at right guard. Then they switched him to left guard. And then he tore his meniscus, but again, wasn't playing good in general. And then 2021, they're like, all right, we're going to start you at right guard again. Got benched after 3 weeks, giving up 12 pressures versus Washington, which Jonathan Allen is a beast, but you shouldn't be giving up 12 pressures.
That's a lot for one game.
Yeah, I mean, he started 7 games last year because, obviously the Bills had to play a little bit of musical chairs with their O-line with COVID and injuries and everything. He gave up 26 pressures and 7 starts. He has been a flat-out bust. I mean, he's a 2019 second-round pick, and he's been benched on an offensive line that's really not that good anyways for the Buffalo Bills. They need help at guard, and they tried, all right, let's try him to tackle to guard, and he's just been a horrible pick for them. It's been a haunting pick for the Bills.
I will say, the worry in the back of my mind is, even if Neal and Aquanu are off the board, but they still try and force a Charles Cross pick, I'm not going to bank on that, they know what they're doing with the offensive line, because there have been some misses that the Buffalo Bills have had, including trading away Wyatt Teller, who has turned into an all-pro with the Cleveland Browns, not being able to see that and how he can develop into that. So,
yeah, and this, when we go through all these draft classes, this is the biggest miss. Next Friday we'll talk about AJ Epinesa, but this is the biggest of misses of them all. Again, it's kind of like Billy Price. Billy Price was a first rounder, where it's like they were a worse offensive line, but it's like you can't make it the cut on this offensive line. That's an issue. In his 3rd year after being moved to guard, has being benched on a team that needs guard help. And Cody Ford. Injuries have also hurt him as well too. But again, at the end of the day, he was benched because they gave him 12 pressures versus Washington, and 26 pressures to total and 7 starts. That's unacceptable play especially for a guy who moved from tackle to guard. You should be able to be a better pass blocker than that. So this was a flat out bust for Brandon Beane, Joe Schoen, and the Bills.
Yep.
All right, the next one is now we're going to start, giving some good ones, and we'll try and go quickly through these and get to the linebacker preview. Round 3, pick 74, Devin Singletary. Running back out of FAU. Fun fact, you'll see they picked 3 different Florida players from 3 different Florida colleges in this draft class.
Yes, they do.
He's been a hit. It hasn't been a home run pick, but he's been a hit. He's averaged 4.7 yards per carry, 5.2 or 52 yards per game in the last 3 years. He's been their starting running back, and they drafted Zach Moss the year before.
Year after.
Was Moss the year before, year after?
No, Moss is in third round pick of 2020.
Okay, but anyways, he's been their starting running back. Now the Bills do want a running back one. Like I think that's a position they might address in the draft, and maybe even early, first round, second round. But he's been a hit for them. And again, they haven't had the greatest, offensive line in front of them. He's been able to average 4.7 yards a pop, 52 yards per game in a split backfield. Singletary's been a nice third round pick for him, and that's kind of relevant because we keep on hearing third round running back for the Giants right now.
I think it's a lock. I think the 2019-2020 trend of Brandon Beane, Joe Schoen, Buffalo Bills taking running backs back-to-back years in that third round, I think that's going to be the money zone for Giants running backs.
Which is kind of wild when we talk about all the needs that this team has, and we're thinking, like, I know it's about the future, but...
In a way, I mean, picking running back is about the future because...
Well, it is, but...
It's about... What are you going to do when Saquon Barkley's not here? Or what are you going to do when Saquon Barkley is injured? Because that is a thing. Like even 2019, when he had a good season, 2019 misses, 4, 5, 6 games. And even when he comes back, he's not fully there. And it took him a couple weeks to get back. So it is, even though I don't love it, I can see why it's building for the future while also drafting a guy that can play right now when Saquon Barkley will not be there. So Devin Singletary has been a good hit for them coming from that third round spot.
I get that. But the Giants did sign Matt Breida. And, Devontae Booker's a free agent.
Yeah, I wouldn't be stoked about those if Saquon Barkley goes, like having those two as the backup plan.
No doubt, but also I wouldn't be stoked at taking a running back in the third round.
I know. I'm with you. I'm wishy-washy on it because I'm also biased because taking a running back in the third round would mean that Saquon Barkley's future with the Giants is limited, and the chances of him being here long term goes down, and I will take that. But so I'm biased from that standpoint.
Round 3, pick 96, another third round pick, a home run pick. Dawson Knox, tight end out of Ole Miss. Like he's been a home run third round pick. The value they've been able to get out of him. He's been their starting tight end in the last year or so. This past season had 49 catches, 587 yards, 9 touchdowns, 12 yards per catch, a 69% catch rate. Been really productive for them. He's not getting a ton of volume on that team, but he's catching everything that's thrown his way. He's a fast guy who's able to stretch the field. He's a big red zone threat. He's got solid hands. Dawson Knox was a home run third round pick for the Bills.
I wouldn't mind if we used one of those third round picks on a tight end this year. Wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, I would rather that than RB. And, maybe they'll do both with those third round picks.
Yep, maybe.
Round 5, pick 147. This was probably he never really did anything for this. Linebacker Vashon Joseph out of UF, Florida Gators. He was cut in 2020, never played. Now he plays in the CFL.
Happens. 5th round pick.
All right, round 6, pick 181. My guy, cornerback / safety now. Miami, Jaquan Johnson. I like this guy, my Miami guy. He's played like 10% of the snaps, on defense the past few years, and he's been a core special teamer for them. I will say the one game where he got more than 13 defensive snaps this past year, he had 1 interception, 1 pass breakup, and 3 tackles. So he showed up in that game. He hasn't gotten an opportunity to be a guy because they have Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. But again, the cover 1 guys like him. They know that he's not going to play because of those guys ahead of him, but they do like him. And again, we're talking going into year 4, and a 6th round pick is still hanging out around the roster. That's good.
Yeah, and he played 44 games. 6th round pick, playing 44 games, when the draft class was 2019. Solid.
Now let's go into the 7th round. Daryl Johnson, defensive end. Played a 5th of the snaps as a 7th rounder in 2019 and 20, which is like, okay, that's nice. Had a couple sacks in both those seasons. Then they take this 7th rounder who's been playing 20% of the snaps. They trade him for a 6th rounder to the Panthers. And then he got hurt and put on IR for the Panthers in October. But that's a hell of a finesse. You draft a guy in the 7th round, play him 20, get a chunk of snaps out of him, get a chunk of reps out of him for 2 seasons, and then trade him for more than what you picked him for. That's a nice finesse by the Bills. They do a lot of good late round trades. Yeah,
so I'm expecting something to happen in the trade department. for the Giants this year. So I'm expecting it.
Yeah, I mean they're constantly working the trade talks.
Maybe they can't afford all 9 of these guys. Maybe.
Yeah, but they can add other picks with trading, random dudes on this roster. We're about to talk about linebackers. Who's to say they don't trade Tay Crowder for some value or something like, for some of the things they've pulled off and we've seen, they do like to. I mean, they did it. Unfortunately, they did it with a guy like Wyatt Teller. And I was just throwing Tay Crowder as a name because of my linebackers in the head. And then the other 7th round pick, pick 227 or 6.
228.
228. How about that? Tommy Sweeney, tight end of Boston College. Didn't really play, and then this past year he played 30% of the snaps, had 9 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. He's a blocking tight end, but he's still on the roster. He's going to be on the roster going into next season for a 7th round pick. That's nice. I mean, our 7th round pick from 2019 was Big George. Remember Big George out of Kentucky?
Oh, yeah.
George Asafo-Ajay.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when people were saying, like, we can't draft, don't draft over. Anyways, that was our early Twitter days. But I like Big George. He did well against Montez Sweat in college.
He had a good that was 2019, right?
Yeah.
He had a good camp.
Yeah,
because I was there for that camp. It was the last camp I went to.
We're big George guys on this podcast.
Big George guys.
We like Big George. So that is their 2019 draft class. I'm going to read this ad, and then we're going to get into the linebacker class for 2022. And this episode is brought to you by DraftKings. And baseball fans, it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. New customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still take a swing at stacks of green with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Baseball Contest. New customers can play free for thousands in prizes with their first deposit. Pick a lineup of 2 pitchers and 8 batters while staying under the salary cap and rack up points for hits, runs, strikeouts, and more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash when you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code JOHNBOY. Bet just $5 and win $200 in free bets if your team wins their game. That's promo code JOHNBOY at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. 21 plus restrictions apply and will be trademarks used with permission. See show notes for details. All right, Justin, we're going to start with some of the top guys in this class. And I actually don't think this guy is too far-fetched for the Giants if a certain situation happened, and not just a trade back. If let's say Evan Neal, Kim Ikwonu, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau go the top 4. Let's say that happens. Let's say we go Ahmad Gardner at 5.
Yep.
Let's say the next best edge goes at 6.
Yep. Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, Jermaine. Fill in whoever theirs is at 6. So now you're the 7th pick. Are you taking your 4th best edge? We taking a wide receiver?
And I would take this guy over Charles Cross.
I would too. Are we taking Charles Cross, which I think what the Giants would end up doing? And that's Devin Lloyd out of Utah. I would take this guy over Kyle Hamilton. How about that? I'll hit you with that right now. I know that. But I have this guy as an A+ player. I love him. We actually talked about him in our way too early draft preview in the summer last year. 6'3" out of Utah, 237 pounds, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.66 40, 35-inch vertical jump. I mean, just racked up the stats his career at Utah. In this past year in 14 games, 111 tackles, 7 sacks, 22 tackles for a loss, and 4 interceptions. And those interceptions are very impressive. And then obviously had good stats the 2 years before that in a total of 19 games. He's a do-it-all linebacker, and you can line him up all over, including edge. And that can get a little interesting when you talk about like what happened with Micah Parsons last year. Great speed, range, and agility, and just bursts, and he uses it well. Like he just knows what he's doing. His strength isn't amazing, but it's not deficient. And again, I think he processes things extremely quickly, and moves up into his gap. Knows when the jump gaps. Like I think he can make up for the mistakes of others. If another player doesn't play their gap responsibly, he can jump into that gap and save a big play. There is times where I think he can play up into the gap too quickly and get sealed off, but that happens when you're an aggressive player. Mm-hmm. Here's what I like a lot too. He sheds blocks in multiple ways, whether it's his speed, agility, dipping unders, and he has really, really active hands, and he's got decently long arms and good size overall. Now, they line him up at pass rusher at times, and sometimes for like a majority of the game. Like USC, they did it a lot. and he's got like real pass rush ability for an off-ball linebacker. Like
he has some better pass rush moves than some of the edge guys in this draft class.
Yeah, like he can bend the edge. He uses his hands well. He can work outside in. And then if you line him in the interior on the A gap, is it like obviously if he's doing that versus tackles, he can really dominate. Now that being said, when he's locked up versus a tackle in the run, he can lose that rep, off the line of scrimmage. But again, he can, he knows how to disengage those well. In coverage, he understands zone and uses his instincts to make big plays. Go watch his interception versus the Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. Like just a beautiful interception and turned it into a touchdown. Really good, and then obviously holds up in man and he plays it aggressively. I think I have like 5 A+ players like Ahmad Gardner, Devin Lloyd, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon. I think I have like 5 A+ players, and Devin Lloyd is one of those guys, Justin.
Yeah, there are some guys that we're going to talk about that we're like, well, they're really good flying sideline to sideline, but they're limited when they're stacked up against blockers. There are some guys that aren't athletic enough, and they solely rely on instincts, and that's why they're good, and that's going to kind of slow down at the NFL level because guys are just bigger, faster, stronger. Devin Lloyd, there's kind of like very little that he does poorly, and that's the difference between Devin Lloyd and everybody else in this draft class, where there's not that caveat of, yeah, he has instincts, but he's not always just relying on his instincts. He's a really good athlete. He is one of these guys, which there's a shit ton of these guys in this draft class, of those guys that can go sideline to sideline and just fly around the football field. He can do that too, but that's not the only thing that he can do. And lining up at edge, where I think there's one other guy that really lined up at edge, maybe 2 other guys in this, that we're going to be talking about today that lined up at edge, and one of them is Beavers from Cincinnati, and he's not going to be taken. He's a lower end of the draft kind of guy, maybe 3rd, 4th round. So Devin Lloyd, there's very little that he does poorly, and I think he's going to be an impact player for a very, very long time. And he's also not one of those guys that is just limited to, hey, you can be a will linebacker, you're going to hit this gap and just go, go, go. No, I think he could be a Mike linebacker, and I think he can be like a captain of the defense and kind of control everything.
Yeah, he can do it all.
Yeah.
And then him coming in playing next to Blake Martinez, and then I think he would get edge reps right away. And again, when I talk about him at 7, it's like worst case scenario how the top 6 play out. But if the Giants trade back, Lloyd should be like on their radar big time.
That's who first goes to my brain.
Yeah, and I mean, it just popped, like, when we did our way too early draft preview, he was, like, projected in the mid-seconds, and I was like, this guy's a first-rounder. Like, he's the best linebacker I've watched. Like, you compare him to the last year's class, and, like, he fits right in with that group of, Parsons, Zaven Collins, and JOK. Like, he fits in that group, and I had him, I think I like him more than JOK and Zaven Collins. And again, when we compare him to Micah Parsons, he's not the pass rusher that Micah Parsons would be.
No,
but he's the better off-ball linebacker than what Micah Parsons was, especially in coverage. Where Micah Parsons is a little more just see ball, get ball, which has done well. And I think that's why he's translated the pass rusher a little better.
I think Micah Parsons should make a full-time move to edge just because of how and not because of he's a bad linebacker, just because of how good of an edge rusher he is. Devin Lloyd is not the same. Like, I think long-term he should be an interior linebacker, but he should be getting edge reps every once in a while.
Yes, and I think that would fit very well in a Wink Martindale scheme, where you want your linebackers blitzing, but also to get back in coverage. Like, this would be a great pick.
How unpredictable he can be, right? Like, what is he going to do?
Yeah, yeah. I would be excited for Devin Lloyd. I tweeted out the other day, I was like, I wish it'd be more responsible, and then for the Giants to pick him. But the more I think about it, I was like, I do think it'd be a responsible pick. For the Giants, because if we all talk about best player available, and then when we say a linebacker, people are like, oh, you can't take a linebacker. Well, Devin Lloyd, I would, if we do trade back into like the 15 range, Devin Lloyd's at the top of my list.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's more responsible than, and again, I hate to keep on using Charles Cross as an example, but I'm going to. It's more responsible than taking Charles Cross, because I think he's just a better football player.
I agree with that. We talk about, best player available is kind of a myth. It needs to match need, especially when you're a team like the Giants, but also you can't reach. And I think Charles Cross would be a reach. But we'll talk more about Cross in the offensive tackle preview. Next on the list is who I do have as the number 2 inside linebacker in the class, Nakobe Dean, linebacker to Georgia. I mean, this guy is just one. He's extremely fun to watch. He is undersized, 5'11", 229 pounds. This past year for Georgia, he had 72 tackles, 6 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 2 picks. He's a small player, but he's extremely violent linebacker, and he adds real pass rush ability. Sideline to sideline speed is really good, and he's elite moving forward. Like his burst and agility is A+ to me, and he fires through gaps with violence, and he destroyed plays for the opposing offenses facing Georgia. Like if you watch anybody on that team, I thought Nakobe Dean destroyed plays for the other team more than Jordan Davis, more than anybody on that team. It was Nakobe Dean who was just wreaking havoc on offenses, and big part of that is the ability to slip through block with speed, bend, and agility, and his hands, again, are very quick and violent. Now, that being said, he does need to be a better processor, but I do think it'll come with time. And because of his size, if he gets head up with an offensive lineman, he does lose that battle at times, but at the same time with his size, he can get leverage, and he can give offensive line real issues and really displace them. So it's kind of hit or miss with that. And then obviously his closing ability on ball carries is elite. And one of the things you notice is when he closing on a quarterback, he may not get the sack, but he'll leap up and get a pass deflection because he closes on QBs way quicker than they would expect in a blitzing inside linebacker too. So he's able to get up into that throwing lane. I think he's good in zone. He turns it into man with speed and agility to keep up. Man coverage, I don't think he's great at, but I think he can be. Like there was one play, I can't remember who it was against. I think it was actually Alabama. In the SEC championship, he went underneath the pick on a wheel route and stayed with the running back, which is insane. Like on a wheel route, if the linebacker goes underneath, that's like an easy pitch and toss to the running back, and he was right in the running back's hip. It was unreal. Here's what I will say is my biggest worry about Nakobe Dean. They let him time stuff up and essentially run blitz and then obviously pass blitz a lot. I don't know how often he's going to be in that situation. Now, with Wink Martindale, he would be in that situation a lot more than most teams. But that is one of my worries is like he was able to time stuff up at the snap real quick and had a head start on a lot of his havoc-wreaking plays.
Which that is a skill, and that's something that I talked about with Kayvon Thibodeau is like that's something that he does. He times up the snap. Now, obviously, they're playing different positions too, but timing up the snap and getting a jump on that is a skill that football players do have. But I also understand the concern of that too, where maybe that won't happen as much in the NFL. Nakobe Dean is the player that when you're trying to watch another player on Georgia's defense, which take 5 of the 11 starters on Georgia's defense, maybe even more. They're all going to be in the draft this year, but you're watching another player on Georgia's defense. And this is my favorite part about the draft process. You're watching a player, and you're like, who the hell is that guy? Who's making that play? And Nakobe Dean every time would make these wowzo plays, nutcase plays, whenever you're trying to watch Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, et cetera, et cetera. So that he would be the guy that would do that. Even when I'm watching Quay Walker, it's like, oh, there's Nakobe Dean making a crazy play again. He's one of those guys where at least from day one right away, Bobby, whereas Devin Lloyd can be like that number one guy. I think you put Nakobe Dean right away as the weak side linebacker and just tell him to go. Like, snap the ball, attack this, hit this gap, go, go, go. And if he flies, because he can do that from day one. The thing that I'm a little worried about is how well is he going to take on blocks and win at the point of attack on the pro level. Especially if he doesn't have that head of steam, if he doesn't jump the snap, if he doesn't have that head of steam, and he's kind of just relying on strength and block shedding, how well is he going to win at the point of attack? That's really the only thing I'm worried about.
And he's got to start process things better, but I do think he will do that better.
Reps.
With more. This was his first time playing Mike Linebacker. Monty Rice was their Mike Linebacker last offseason. So that's why in like 7 he had less tackles. A good chunk less of tackles last year. And again, me and you both like Monty Rice. Every year I like a Georgia linebacker. And this year we might even like 3 of these sons of guns. So yeah. Now that being said, if we do trade down, I don't know if Dean is the right target for the Giants. I see Dean as like if somehow in hell his size makes him to fall to 36, that's where I could see Dean being a target.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But also, fit-wise for Wink Martindale, I don't know if I would rather have Dean or the next guy on our list.
Yeah, I mean, these top 3 guys, who are my top 3 just in general, like, all would fit great. And the next guy on the list, I love this guy. Fell in love with him. Fell in love when he was working Tyler Linderbaum's ass, little small ass. Leo Chenal, linebacker out of Wisconsin. 6'3", 250 pounds. Oh, he's not athletic. Well, guess what? He ran a fucking 4.53 at the 40.
Whoa.
Had a 40.5-inch vertical jump. So how's that for athletic? And this past season, in 11 games, he had 115 tackles. That's more than 10 per game. Do the math. 8 sacks, 18.5 tackles for a loss. He's your prototypical linebacker who can do anything that's asked of him. He processes and diagnoses plays extremely quick. We actually talked about him on the mid-round prospect episode with Nick Flotto, which I don't like to double up on players. But Leo Chenal's like, no, you're not stealing this guy from us talking about him, Nick Flotto. Leo Chenal's my guy. Processes and diagnoses plays really quickly while using his instincts. Now, there's times where he can be undisciplined in a run fit, but those times I feel are rare. And those instincts are going to lead to huge tackle for loss plays. Here's the thing that is really like just odd, and maybe not with Nakobe Dean. His hand pop. He's got powerful hands and he's got great placement. He just displaces offensive linemen. He's able to disengage blockers with his hands and quickness. And foot quickness. I think he plays the position very disciplined. Like he keeps his hips square with the line of scrimmage while scraping over. I don't think he's the best tackler in open space, and I think that's probably like his biggest weakness. Might be just overall agility.
Very small arm length, so maybe that's part of it with tackling.
He makes all the dirty work plays on the backside screens, etc. And coverage. People say, "Oh, he's not great in coverage." I disagree. I saw him many times shut down progressions on over routes, on stick concepts, like just shut down the progressions, and it would lead to coverage sacks. If you put him in man coverage, he likes to get physical. I think he can get in trouble with illegal contact there. But again, people don't realize, and I think this might be a talking point and I'm cooking up. I think linebacker coverage is a luxury and not a need. Because linebackers don't cover tight ends anymore. They don't. They cover running backs in the flat and they play their spots in zone.
And also, linebackers are starting to come off the field on passing downs, more and more frequently as the league kind of goes on, too.
You draft a guy this high, you don't want to come off the field, but I do think he's good in coverage. And again, like, always not great in man coverage. Well, again, he's not going to be put in man coverage snaps except for the running back, and those are honestly kind of easy reps. Like, Tay Crowder was able to do those type of things unless they lined him out wide, and that's when you need to be careful with a guy. But he gets to a spot, he keeps his eyes on the QB. And then as a pass rusher, he made Tyler Linderbaum look stupid. And his blitzing, he can win one-on-one reps with his hands and quickness, and scheme-related timing stuff. Like he did that really well. And there was one rep where it's like, oh, he's a free rusher. Of course he got a sack. It's like, no, he fooled this front by the way he played up and then jumped the gap and then was able to finish with his speed and agility. You don't get 8 sacks for no reason at the inside linebacker play. It's not because of scheme. And Leo Chenal, man, he's a love-it player. I think he should be in play for the Giants at 36, among a handful of players.
You can't be taking my line of love-it player because that's exactly what man, he's like a love-it, gotta-have-it fringe because at 36, he's there. Like, he's an option that I would really like.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, he definitely should be an option. I don't care what mock drafts say or draft gurus say. I do think he should be an option at 36.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Not the option.
Option.
But a option. If they come away with Leo Chenal there, I think he's going to be an awesome player in the league.
Listen to this combination of sort of measurables. 90th percentile for weight at the linebacker spot. 87th percentile for 40-yard dash, which it's like, yeah, all right, 40-yard dash, whatever. But the explosiveness stuff, 97th percentile for vertical jump and 95th percentile for broad jump. That's insane. For a guy that's 250 pounds to put up those explosivity numbers for an interior linebacker where, remember, there's Nakobe Deans in this class. There's Asamoah's in this class. There's Troy Andersons in this class that are running like running backs. And this guy's doing it at 250 pounds.
Yeah, I'm in full bloom love with Leo Chenal. He's one of my, again, top player, one of my favorite players in this draft. I always find those like not first round linebackers I fall in love with. Leo Chenal is that guy for me this year.
I just checked my notes. By the way. I was wrong. He's not a love-it player. He's a gotta-have-it player. I did write it down.
Love it like Callahan coffee. All right, next player, Quay Walker. We're hitting another Georgia linebacker. Shut up about Georgia. We can't this year. They have 12 players that are going to be starters on defense. Quay Walker,
It's crazy.
linebacker out of Georgia. Let's look at his size. Oh, well, he's just 6'4", 241 pounds. Ran a 4.5, 240 at that size. There was a trio of linebackers at Georgia with him, Tyndall, and then obviously Nakobe Dean, like we talked about. So he had 65 tackles, a sack and a half, 5.5 tackles for loss. So not wowing stats, but good enough. He's your every down, like prototypical type of linebacker with his size, strength, and athleticism.
Yeah, and that was going to be my main question to you. I think Quay Walker. No, I think Nakobe Dean's going to be the better pro, but Quay Walker fits the NFL the best.
Yeah,
right
Nakobe
now.
Dean's got a size issue. But I think Walker's a high IQ player who understands his assignment, and he does it every single rep. I think he diagnoses run plays better than Nakobe Dean does. And he plays to his fit, even when the offense makes it really muddy with whether it's misdirection and motion and stuff. I feel like he does a really good job of it. I think he's got adequate speed, but out of the three Georgia linebackers, I do think he is the slowest.
But that's not saying that he's slow. It's just saying that he is the slowest out of those two other freak athletes.
Yeah, and again, like we're after the top three guys, there is like a step down to this next group. I think he's inconsistent taking all blocks, but he does have the strength to disengage. But he just needs to use his hands better, which is something that coaching can teach. Doesn't mean it's going to be guaranteed to teach, and he does bring power when he wants to. I just think he tries to run through blocks instead of disengaging or beating them to a spot. And part of that comes with being wait till you see it to go type of player that Quay Walker is. So I think he needs some better instincts. I don't think he's ever going to be a playmaker. Like Nakobe Dean's, like these last three guys talk about are playmakers. I don't think he's ever going to be a huge playmaker in the run game, but he is going to do his job. And like as a blitzer, he brings a pop, but that's kind of it. Here's where I was surprised. He's really good in coverage. Like unreal, like both in zone and man coverage. Like he can keep his eyes on the QB while diagnosing route concepts and seeing their patterns and matching with them. Like he closes progressions with his instincts and man coverage. Like he's like unlike Chenal, where Chenal can get too handsy. Like he gets his hands on and then he's in your hip and he's running with you. Like I was surprised when I put on the tape and watch Quay Walker like just running with guys and running with even receivers that time on over routes. Like I was very surprised to see how good he was in coverage.
He had a 9.66 relative athletic score. I think he's a balanced player, where I don't think he has a lot of elite qualities, but I also don't think he has a lot of negatives to his game. And I think that's what separates him from being a top tier guy with like the Devin Lloyds and Nakobe Deans of the world. And then that also separates him from being on the level of, the Mumas and, I guess Christian Harris is going to be next too. Because he doesn't have some glaring holes in his game, that's what kind of keeps him on this, like, kind of like a little level of his own.
Yeah. So, Quay Walker. All right, just why don't you read the ad before we get into the next group of cats?
Yeah, so we have a new sponsor, and I've been actually using their product somewhat quite often recently, Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1, that is what the product is called. I started taking AG1 because I'm on a diet. As everybody knows, I'm almost up to 50 pounds lost. I started taking AG1 because the diet that I'm on has me at a little bit of a calorie deficit. And what AG1, I start off my morning, every morning now for the last 2 weeks, I've started my morning off with AG1, which is in this box for the YouTube crowd. And simply, I put 12 grams of AG1 into my glass of water every morning, and that gives me the vitamins and the fuels that I need to kind of stay fresh, stay alert, and it helps me feel really, really good. So, one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help start your day right. It's how I start off my day. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things, especially I need that during draft season because we're grinding over here. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, nasty, hear that? Or artificial anything while still tasting good. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Damn right. So, right now it's time to reclaim your health and your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you free Wow, free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/giants. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/giants to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I've done it. I've enjoyed it.
That's fantastic. I had a great tweet while you were reading the ad.
Thank you.
It was, you know how Kadarius Toney got? Well, he didn't really get got, but, you know, the whole Wes Steinberg thing.
Yeah. He got got.
I screenshotted it and quote tweeted it, you know, NYG's daily saying, I must be fun at parties, and quote tweeted it with the screenshot of the tweet saying, I don't even go to parties.
Fun. That was good.
Yeah, really, you know, me just thinking on my feet. How about that? All right, next guy on this list. And I think we're taking... You know, I view all those other guys as round 1, round 2 guys, and I think we're talking next about borderline guys that are round 2, round 3. And next on this list is a player that I like and I think can be great, but I'm not in love with, and that's Christian Harris, linebacker at Alabama, who's 6 foot, 226 pounds. He's got a pretty good frame. He looks taller than 6 foot, which is, you know, when he tested in at 6 foot, I was surprised by that. He looks like 6'4" on tape. Ran a 4.44 40 of, you know, a Wendy's 40, a 4.44. Just
wow.
Ball, you know, I just thought of that. You know, man, I'm quick today. This past year he had 80 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for a loss. Justin, obviously you see the 40 time, and that shows up on tape. He's got great speed, burst, and short range, and on the perimeter. I think he takes on blocks well with his hand pop, and he does have a deconstruction plan. The speed, the straight line speed, I think translates to agility. Like, he's got good agility. He's got a good feel for slipping under blocks as they approach. Here's the thing. I think he's a slow processor, and he rarely makes plays at the line of scrimmage for me. And I think he can mess up run fits. He can be out of place. And just being paired with being out of place at times, I think he just doesn't have the great instinct plays. But again, like that's how much do you think you can work with that with Christian Harris?
Yeah.
You know, like Jamin Davis, he maybe doesn't have the same athletic profile as Jamin Davis, but I didn't like Jamin Davis last year, and I was blown away. You know, I try not to trash talk the opponent, you know, the NFC East rivals too much, especially on draft day because there's no winning. But in my brain, I was like, I can't believe Jamin Davis went 20. I didn't even know if I would take him in the early second. You know, and Dave Gettleman was picking between Jamin Davis and Toney, supposedly. Like, he admitted that. Not supposedly, I guess. He did admit that. And that's kind of some of the things that remind me about Christian Harris. That being said, in coverage, he can be a huge asset with his speed. You know, he picks up his route concepts and zone and turns them into man. When he's in off-man coverage, he needs to jump more routes, like stick concepts. But again, I don't know how often he's going to be in those situations. But when he is glued on a guy as a trailer, he does glue to guys. He doesn't bite, and he doesn't bite on play action, which is part of the it's good and evil of instincts and being aggressive. He doesn't bite on play action, so he gets back underneath crossing routes. And his speed does make him an asset as like a timing pass rusher. Again, it's just like he's a guy who's got all the traits, but I don't know if he's going to be a good linebacker.
Yeah. Yeah, Christian Harris joins the line of guys, and he even just, he continues the trend because there's going to be some guys after him too. These linebackers are just fly around the field linebackers. Like, just they can go sideline to sideline, and it's just insane seeing how athletic, fast, and aggressive these guys are, playing with the disregard for your body. Christian Harris joins the crowd of this year's crop of interior linebackers. Aggressive, powerful, physical blitzer like Bobby talked about. Doesn't just have the speed, can bring the pop too. There's some guys in this draft class that, all they have is that speed, but he can bring the pop too. It's the mental lapses for me. We're not if you're not recognizing right away, whatever blocking scheme's happening in front of you or whatever play's happening in front of you right away, then if you lose that half a second off the snap, then you've lost the play, at least at the NFL level. And it doesn't matter if you have all the speed in the world to make up for it. You've lost it in the NFL. So can Christian Harris kind of get to that point where the instincts and football IQ can get there with his athleticism?
And again, I don't know how teachable that, like you say, well, you got the frame, you got the speed, like I can teach you the rest. I don't know, like Jamin Davis had those huge issues
it's feel.
at Washington.
It's all feel too. It's not just can you run around the field and go sideline to sideline, but is it feel for the game? And that's tough.
Well, and I saw a draft analyst who actually does some stuff for a Washington football team, and he had a tweet about Jamin Davis, like, oh, I think he's going to get better, and here, like, showed an example of 2 reps. It's like, here's one that's 8 yards down the field where he's slow to react, and the other one was when we did the Alex Bachman speed sweep, and he just ran upfield off, and he was lined up on the edge. Like that, those are your 2 examples of him being a good player. Like I don't think
anytime the Giants put a wide receiver motion at the snap, it meant that they were getting the football. So congratulations.
Well, and he was lined up on the edge. But that being said, I do think he has better instincts than Jamin Davis. And better processing. I just use Jamin Davis as an example.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he doesn't have maybe the athletic profile as a Jamin Davis.
Yeah. And also Christian Harris, a note that I have hasn't shown great improvement from year to year. Just feel like he's been at the level that he's been at right now from year to year. So if you're trying to project how a guy grows in the NFL, look at his time in college too, and if he's gotten better there.
Right. All right, next player on this list, Brian Asamoah, linebacker out of Oklahoma, 6 foot, 226 pounds, 4.5, 640. This past year in 12 games, 80 tackles, a sack, 3.5 tackles for loss, which I was surprised to not see him have some bigger numbers in those spots. I'm really interested to see what happens with his NFL career. Not even good or bad, just how he's used. He's a small, fast linebacker, but to me, he reminds me of a box safety. Like if he's a linebacker, like then Jabril Peppers is a linebacker at times.
Yeah.
He plays like a box safety, and again, he won't be able to handle that Mike linebacker in the NFL. But he's got really good speed and burst with really good instincts. He plays aggressive downhill. He's just an overall playmaker, which is surprising when you see his actual stats. But like he plays like that. Like he's really agile. He can slip blocks. He can win with angles. I think he's a solid processor, but at the same time, like a box safety, it can be a lot of guessing as well. But he's horrible taking on blocks. He gets dominated. If the player gets his hands on him, you get dominated. You can't just rely on speed and aggressiveness in the NFL, or you're going to be taken advantage of. And it's not just like, oh, he doesn't maybe have the size or the strength. Like, no, he's got bad technique, which makes him an easy block. Like if he doesn't win initially with his speed, like he gets destroyed. We've seen even top-rated guys who are kind of like these speed, Isaiah Simmons, who really struggled to start. It's like, yeah, you can't just be more athletic in the NFL. Like you gotta learn how to play linebacker.
I had that point.
Yeah, how about that? He's not a great tackler, especially in the open field. In coverage, obviously, though, like I think linebackers are getting better at coverage, but like he's the total package. Like you put him in man, he'll do well. You can play like that Tampa 2, deep middle, and then obviously every other zone he picks up his route concepts and turns into man. So like he's the total package when you think of a coverage linebacker. But the past couple years, I was always like, give me a smaller speed guy, even if he transfers from safety to linebacker. And I think I'm slowly going back to like, I kind of want my linebackers a little bigger and being able to deconstruct run plays. I think I'm going back into that being what I want out of a linebacker. And Brian Asamoah is what analytics is trying to turn linebackers into nowadays.
No, but I agree with your approach, and I think your approach is actually analytically advanced, but you're just not thinking it, because linebackers, defensive linemen, their job should be to stop the run, whereas everybody in the secondary, their job should be to stop the pass. So the less guys that you can have in the box, the better, so to speak. So you can put more secondary players back to defend the pass and stop the explosive play. That's the NFL. So I'm there with you with wanting a little bit more of a physical linebacker, even if he isn't the most athletic and can't go sideline to sideline. But Asamoah, again, join the crowd of just linebackers that can go, guys that can go sideline to sideline. I won't even call him officially a linebacker right now, but I'm giving him this year's honorary play like a madman with no regard for the safety of your own body. Like basically what the award that I gave Joseph Asai last year, Brian Asamoah is officially getting the award this year. So he's a fun player to watch. Extremely, extremely fun. And also you mentioned coverage. Fact that he went to Oklahoma. If you're going to be playing in the Big 12, you better be good at defending the pass. So he had the 4th most coverage stops in the nation this year, according to PFF.
And it's hard to judge these linebackers in the Big 12, by the way.
It's funky. It's really funky. Yeah. So that's why, like, when you talk about him taking on blocks and, trying to defend the run, well, obviously they run the ball in the Big 12, but you're asked to do a lot more different things in the Big 12 as opposed to like the SEC or the Big 10 stuff.
Like I hate watching linebackers play versus Big 12 offenses.
It's funky.
Like, this
funky.
is not transferable to the NFL at all. And maybe those offenses will trickle up eventually, but it's like this is just not NFL football that we're watching right here.
Yeah, but depending on how the board
between
falls,
the tackle boxes.
But if depending on how the board falls, if Asamoah was there in the 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, I would love it. He'd be a fun player to grab if he falls like that, and I think he could be someone that does fall. And while people like us in draft Twitter are yelling like, "Come on, someone take Brian Asamoah!" Every team's fan base is beginning of 4th round like Brian Asamoah, but I could see him falling in the NFL's eyes
because he's reckless. He's very reckless.
Yeah, and he's just bad versus like the run, unless he's moving forward like at the snap.
Yep.
So another next on this list is a guy who I actually do kind of have a hard time getting a read on. And that's Chad Muma, linebacker out of Wyoming, 6'3", 239 pounds. He looked really good at the Senior Bowl when we were down there. He did all of the combine stuff, ran a 4.63 40, a nice 40-inch vertical jump, 27 bench reps, 4.28 shuttle, and a 7.06 cone drill. In 13 games, 142 tackles, so 11.5 tackles per game, or 11 tackles per game, essentially. A sack and a half, 8 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions. So not eye-popping numbers in those categories besides the interception stats. He's your prototypical size with good athleticism, but I think he needs to polish his game more. I think his speed is adequate, but he can play a little out of control. It's going to be interesting to see. I do think he's a player you can get into control, and he has the size and he has measurables. I think I do think Chad Muma is going to be a good linebacker in the NFL. I think he's a lot safer than like Brian Asamoah, who we just talked about.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
He can play, he plays aggressive sideline to sideline, but he's a little more hesitant between the tackles. If you're playing versus like an outside zone team, he's flown, but at the same time he can get so aggressive that it can lead to cutback. So it's finding finding that middle ground with it. In the between the tackles, I think he does a good job fighting through the half man relationship. He just needs to really deconstruct blocks better with his hands, but he does stay square, and you can see him putting it all together. I really do see Muma putting it all together. I think he does a good job of using his hips and eyes in coverage. He's not like a eyes on the QB, he gets to your spot guy, and he's not just like eyes. You got your head facing the quarterback, looking to the pickup. He does a good job of playing both. They use him as that Tampa 2 deep linebacker as well too, which is a good sign when you're coming into the NFL. He's a hard guy to get a read on, Justin, but I do think he'll be at least a solid pro.
Yeah, it may take a little time, because he went to Wyoming. Wyoming has produced some pretty good interior linebackers.
Logan Wilson was really good for the Bengals. He was balling during the Super Bowl.
And I loved him. I loved Logan Wilson. Another guy that could fly sideline to sideline, but that's not the only thing that he did, Logan Wilson. Now, I do think Logan Wilson's better than Muma. I think he's actually much better as a prospect. But I do think Muma plays kind of calm control. I didn't see a ton. I saw Muma playing like a bat out of hell when he needed to. So maybe, when you're talking about those outside zone plays over pursuing when he's playing like a bat out of hell. But also I see a lot of times where sometimes he can be too patient, but he's calm, in control, and he's balanced. And I think he does move well laterally too, where he's not just focusing on that sideline to sideline speed, but I do think he can move well laterally, and he's not just always playing at one speed kind of player. So that's what, you kind of like to see that from a linebacker, balanced. I also think he understands that making the play isn't always the main objective, but preventing offenses from doing what they want to do and allowing there's 10 other guys on the football field to come and make a play. I think Muma gets that aspect of it too, where, again, against outside zone, I'm going to sit at this point so this running back cannot get the sideline like he wants to. I'm going to sit here so he has to kind of cut it back, and then there's 10 other guys that can make the play. So I saw a little bit of that too. But I think Bobby and I, some of our observations are a little different, and I think that it's what makes it a little tough to project Muma and what exactly he is and what he can be.
Yeah, he plays at the small school, but he did look good down in Mobile, which is it's hard to judge linebackers down there. But Muma kind of was holding up all right in every area.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this next guy, and then we can do Actually, no. You do an advertisement, and then we'll talk about the next guy. How about that?
Yes.
And the next
One
guy's a
more
guy
ad.
we both like.
One more ad. Do. Ba-da-doom, boom, boom. Every year in the NFL, we look forward to a generational player, but a sure thing like Quentin Nelson, ouch. Manscaped with the Quentin Nelson drop in the ad read. Doesn't come each draft. The only true guaranteed quality pickup this season is Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming, and the only thing guaranteed is that Manscaped is going to be sponsoring our draft stream, which we thank them so very much. And we're going to have a hell of a time for 3 days straight. So you should be watching that on YouTube whenever we go live. The best coaches always think ahead, so make sure you Belichick your crotch garden before it gets more out of hand than the Jets O-line. Now, you see, it can be corny sometimes, so that was a good one. With Manscaped, the Performance Package 4.0, your skill position will be sleek and smooth enough for a sub 4.340. A little faster than I was this year. Support us and head over to manscaped.com and use the code GIANTS at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. So, Performance Package 4.0, you know what you get. You get the Lawnmower 4.0. You're going to get the nose and ear and hair trimmer, the Weed Whacker. You're going to get the Performance Package and get that Crop Preserver as well. So, 20% off and free shipping with the code GIANTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code GIANTS. Turn your Mr. Irrelevant, love that, to a first-round pick with Manscaped. That was really punny and awesome.
Freaking fan freaking tastic. You know who's the guy that we like next?
Who?
And that's Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker at Oklahoma State. He's small, 5'11", 232 pounds. But he ran a 4.5 240, had a 39.5-inch vertical jump. He's been a 4-year starter for Oklahoma State. This past year, had 129 tackles, 3 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, and a pick. He's a small, stout linebacker who plays like a ball of energy. Good overall athlete with good closing speed, and I think he's a solid tackler and he delivers a blow. He plays with great technique. Like his shoulders are always square at the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
He's not the quickest diagnoser in the world, but he is correct in what he does. He doesn't make mistakes, and he overall does play with a downhill mindset. With that size, he's able to get under O-line's pads and really knock them back. Like there were some reps where it's like, man, he just kind of like cleaned this offensive lineman's clock. That being said, he doesn't have quick wins, but he does use his hands well and disengages, and I think part of that is just the size. He can get killed overplaying on like misdirection and play action. Like I guess he doesn't fit his run correct every single time. Like he can get fooled by misdirection.
Mm-hmm.
Gets to a spot in coverage. I don't think he's like bad in coverage or necessarily good, but there's he just kind of gets to a spot and plays it. There's some advances, some good pass reps and some bad ones. In man coverage, I think he's way too aggressive. He tries to get physical and like do bump and run, and he just gets beat badly. And as a blitzer, he's a good timing blitzer. It's going to be interesting to see how his career plays out because he's a solid linebacker, but he's undersized. So I could see him going in the 4th round, and I can see him being 7th undrafted.
He's fun, man. He's not just fun because he's an athlete. He can fly sideline to sideline, but he's fun because he was a good football player in college. He may not be a good football player in the pros, but Malcolm Rodriguez was a good football player for Oklahoma State, and he was very, very fun to watch. He was a 4-year player, and he was a 2-year captain. He was like the captain and the quarterback of that Oklahoma State defense. I like to read sometimes is seeing like, if there's a compliment of you being a good leader, then I think that's good and that's worth noting. And Malcolm Rodriguez certainly has that. 60 consecutive games, durability and consistency. There's just some plays where, like, he's not the best athlete in the world, and yet he's limited by his length, and he's an undersized and stuff like that. But there are just some plays that he made. Like there was a play where it was Baylor, Oklahoma State, the Big 12 championship, and he's getting double teamed. He gets his ass kicked off the line, but he recovers well, sheds one of the blocks, dives at a Baylor running back, gets a hand on the football, forces a fumble. And you're like, how did you go from getting your ass kicked by 2 300-plus pound offensive linemen to then diving and forcing a fumble? He also has an elite background in wrestling too. I believe he's a 2-time state champion in wrestling, and he plays like it too. He plays like he's wrestling. Like I was talking about with John Ridgway in the interior D-line episode. Like those, you can watch those guys. I'm like, yeah, this guy definitely does have a background in wrestling. So,
how many fumbles did you say he forced?
He forced 13 forced fumbles.
That's insane.
13.
That's insane. That's insane.
He makes plays. And he's a good football player. And when we're talking about getting to the 4th, 5th round, it's different when we're talking about rounds 1 through 3, where it's like you better you kind of have to match the athleticism and being a good football player together, right? But when you're talking about 4th, 5th round and day 3, if you're a fun prospect, I like it, and I'd be down if you were on the team.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. But yeah, he's like you said, he's a fun player to watch. But it's like I can see a team being like loving everything he's about and picking him in the round 4, and I could see him getting undrafted. Like,
realistically, you're betting on, this is what I wrote down: instincts, good technique, and some level of quickness. You're betting on those three things: instincts, good technique, and some level of quickness.
Speaking of which, I don't know why that reminded me, but we're not talking about Troy Andersen on this podcast. And I know we're going to get
can't because there's not a lot of film available.
I may have found some, but it's like it's going to take you like 3 hours, 2 hours to go through. It's going to be a pain. Like it's literally like full game like broadcast angle. So I'm going to hope I can get some real film on him. And then if not, I will just go. The week before the draft is I fill in the holes. I fill in the cracks of guys I missed. I'll do that. I was so frustrated because I do not watch guys' highlight tapes. I refuse to watch highlight tapes. And I was trying to I couldn't find anything. I was like, God damn it, let me just watch this guy's highlight tape so I can get an idea of him. It's a pain in the ass trying to go through the Senior Bowl game film. And then it's like all his highlights are at quarterback. It's like, well, this is not helpful at all.
He started out at Montana State as a running back and safety his freshman season. And then he went to... he was very successful at running back, won freshman of the year. Then he went to QB. Then he went back to running back, and then he started to convert to linebacker.
Yeah, so he sounds like an exciting player, and he is fast. I watched some Senior Bowl reps of him, and it was like, oh, this guy's kind of fun. So I will have an evaluation on him before the draft, but it would have taken me forever to get one done before this podcast.
Troy Andersen is 6'3", 243 pounds from Montana State. 9.98 relative athletic score. That is 5th best out of all linebackers from the year 1987 to 2022.
Which confuses me when people talk about how good he is. It's like, how the hell do you watch him? Like, what
Correct.
are you talking about? Where are you getting this information from?
Yeah, I watch, again, same thing with you. The only thing that I could find was the highlight tape, and I just saw that he was, and I watched some Senior Bowl reps that were on YouTube. That's it. That's all I was able to find.
We will have an evaluation before the draft kicks off. Next on the list, 2 more to go. Brandon Smith, linebacker at Penn State, was actually one of the very first guys I evaluated. 6'2", 241 pounds, 4'5", 240. Had 81 tackles, 2 sacks, 9 tackles for a loss. He's got awesome speed for a linebacker, and that shows up on tape. Like I think he was like an elite high school prospect because of that speed. And his best plays are out on the perimeter in space. He just doesn't know how to play a linebacker to me. Like, he's very, very slow to diagnose, and blockers get into him easily. Doesn't deconstruct blocks with his hands through contact. He could wreak havoc shooting gaps, but he just doesn't do it. And part of that is a little bit of scheme, but at the end of the day, it's like you can't be just a gap shooter when you're playing linebacker. I think he's a bad tackler. Like, he doesn't load up, and he arm tackles a ton. He's good in coverage, but for as bad as he is as playing like the linebacker spot, it's interesting. Like, he's a Penn State guy, and he's a hell of an athlete, but I don't know. Like, he's gonna have to grow a lot to be a contributing linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, I'll keep this one kind of brief. Lot to like about the athlete, but actual play leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot of arm tackles that are involved there. I mean, especially another freak, by the way. 6'3", 250 pounds, and he's an insane athlete. But again, playing the game of football...
Like, his speed shows up on tape, It's not just...
Yeah, and how can that part of your game develop? Tough. I don't really like him.
Yeah, me either. But I wanted to throw the Penn State guy in there. Jesse Lukita, I had him as an edge. He might play off ball a little bit. All right, last on this list. This is an interesting prospect, Darian Beavers linebacker, and this isn't ranked. This aren't our linebacker rankings, by the way. So I don't have Beavers ranked last. Darian Beavers linebacker out of Cincinnati, 6'4", 237 pounds, 36.5-inch vertical, 4.28 shuttle. He transferred from UConn in 2019, and he is a super senior. Like he's played snaps in the last 5 seasons in college. This past season, he had 98 tackles, 4 sacks. 11 tackles for loss and a pick. He's a big thumping linebacker and he plays like it. He's versatile to be moved all around as I can see him as a hybrid outside linebacker. I can see him being on the Patriots because they like to use guys like Beavers, and he's very active with his hands.
Donta Hightower.
Yeah, but Hightower's really good.
Yeah.
but
he's bigger too.
But even a guy like Van Noy or somebody, but also Van Noy's better. But he's got very active hands, shed blockers. He's ability to slip under, and he can shoot gaps well when he's given the green light as a blitzer. Physical player with strong base. He's a below average athlete with bad burst, and that bad burst leads to missed tackles or tackling or grasping low on guys. If you put him in a straight gap integrity scheme, he could fit in a little bit, or you put him at outside linebacker reps, and I think he's adequate in zone, but he's not a huge help, and if you put him in man coverage, he's going to give you issues, which we talked about linebacker coverage earlier, but if you try and put him in man coverage, he's going to give you issues, even when you're throwing the swing pass to the running back's probably going to make him miss. So he's got a lot of plus traits, but again, it's like a Cincinnati guy we talked about on Tuesday with me for Desmond Ridder, where a couple people are like, well, why don't you like Desmond Ridder? He does a lot of things well. It's like, but to me, the arm talent is a prerequisite, and his is below average, and I think Beavers has below average NFL athleticism.
Somebody like Kyle Shanahan is begging dummy Pete Carroll to take this guy, because then that will be the guy that Kyle Shanahan just goes after. Now, not to say that this guy may be drafted 4th, 5th round, not to say that he's playing right away, but if he does find playing time, that's the guy that Kyle Shanahan is circling on his defense sets. That's what Shanahan loves to do, attack linebackers. I'm attacking this guy and forcing him to go sideline to sideline when that's not what he does. He's a physical, old-school linebacker that struggles to move out in space if he's asked to. And I can understand the phrase wins and plays in a phone booth watching this guy. I'm like, oh, that makes sense now, because that's how he wins. He doesn't move very well. He would win in a phone booth, and he would win in a fight in there. So I get that now. And he's also one of these linebackers that has edge experience, which not a lot of these guys kind of did both. Now, I don't think he's very good. I don't think he should be getting any edge reps at all in the NFL. But I thought that was fun. You saw some tackles for loss and sacks that came from him lining up at edge, and you don't see a lot of these linebackers do that besides Devin Lloyd and maybe some of the Georgia guys.
Yeah, you're not comparing him at edge to go all right, go get the QB, but you play the run well, be able to add some coverage ability from that spot where you're playing the flats and being able to be able to deconstruct in the run game. So that's where he'll be. When we say putting him at outside linebacker like the Patriots would, it's not to just go get after the passer like you would at Devin Lloyd. But it's it's kind of playing that 3-4 outside linebacker. So that's where you can see him. So we're hitting 1 hour, 10 minutes with all these draft episodes. Do you think we should, I want to ask the listeners, do you think we should go down to 8 players, and keep them to an hour, or should we, continue to do 10 players and do an hour and 10 minutes? Because I'm enjoying doing it at an hour and 10 minutes, but I also always have a goal to keep podcasts under an hour. But you know what, it's draft month, and I got no problem with it. So you guys let us know what you want to do. How do you feel about it, Justin?
I think YouTube people don't like it. I think podcast people love it.
Okay. Well, the YouTube people are the ones who comment, so they're the ones who need to tell us.
They're also the ones that fucking complain a lot. Sorry.
But they're also gonna be listening to the very end of this episode. So you know what? Maybe they're not the people to ask.
That's true. I'm also going to be helping out the YouTube people this episode by adding pictures. I thought that kind of just putting the order of people in the description would be good enough, but I am going to put pictures because I can understand if somebody wants to skip a player and go to the next one, I get it. So I'll be fucking putting pictures in because I edit these episodes enough, but I'll work a little bit harder for everybody.
We used to do 12, but with 12, it was very much like, all right, you were talking about your guy, me talking about your guy. Like it was very.
I've enjoyed these episodes. I have a lot of fun.
10 players, it's like, okay, we're going a little long, but it's also very conversational. Like I feel like we found a happy balance where it's like, hey, these episodes are going to go a little longer than your normal podcast, but also they're going to be good and interesting. So, and just talking about 8 players just doesn't feel like enough. Like I know most podcasts don't do as much as we do. They'll kind of just talk about top guys and 1-2 an episode and go for, get as many clicks as an episode. But I do like the way we do it. And I didn't want to sacrifice that. So,
yeah.
All right, so I answered the question, so don't even bother commenting because we already made our decision. So we appreciate you guys. We'll see you on Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend. We're back on Tuesday with the wide receiver group, which is fun. And there's like 7 guys you can make the argument for as like a top 2 wide receivers. So that'll be fun to talk about. We appreciate you guys. Enjoy your weekend. Until then, let's go Big Blue.